Hey, hello, and welcome to Hughes at 10. This is my new show that I think I'm going to try and do every night at 10, if I can, during lockdown. I don't think I'm going to be going anywhere, so let's do this. Okay, so today we're going to talk about two things. I'm going to be here for about half an hour, so just half an hour of your time, and then I'll be gone out your way. So first of all, we're going to talk a bit about the USA, or USA, as I like to call it. This is my Lonely Planet from, God, this is about 20 years old, this one. I want to try to get to every state in the US. It was my dream to visit every state. And I only got to about, I don't know, 11 of them. And that was when I was told in no uncertain terms that I was not to enter the US ever again without a visa. The reason being I'd gone to Sudan as part of my journey to every country in the world without flying, and they didn't like that. In the first ESTA that I applied for, it was fine. The second one, it was fine. The third one, they changed the rules retrospectively to say you couldn't have gone to Syria, Sudan, Iran, or Iraq, something like that, in the last few years. And I'd been to Sudan, so yeah. After being turned down for an ESTA, I tried to get across the Rainbow Bridge from Canada into the USA, and I got stopped on the bridge. I was interrogated for 3 hours, yeah, it was rather unpleasant. I was there with my publisher, the great Jared Bendis, who helped me publish my book, Man of the World, which I suggest you read. Anyway, listen, I'm wasting time talking about why I can't go to America. The reason why it's relevant, though, is that very soon we might need to get an equivalent of an ESTA, like you need for Canada now, like you need for Australia, in order to go on holiday into the EU. And they can make up the same stupid rules that America does and say, hey, you did this thing once in the past, and now you can't go to Spain on holiday, which would really suck. Anyway, quickly, let's get to the election. So recently, it's been called for Michigan for Biden. So things are looking a bit more better there than they were at 5 o'clock in the morning this morning. But Biden's not out of the woods yet. He still needs to win Nevada or Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania looks like a bit of a long shot now, but Nevada, he is ahead, but he's only ahead by about 8,000 votes, which isn't particularly great. So I'm just looking at the 538 coverage here. But what I want to talk about while we're still trying to suss out what's happening in Nevada is Donald Trump's response to eminently predictable response to his to the turnout of the election. He knew, because everybody knew, that people would vote early and they would send postal votes, and in a lot of states those postal votes wouldn't be opened and read and tallied straight away. They would wait till the in-person voting was done first, and then they'll do the postal votes and the absentee votes and everything else. And Trump knew this, and this is why he's been saying, oh, there's a lot of corruption in the mail system, the US post system. And then he was saying you can't trust these, there's been these like ballots that have just been found in a river, but no one knew what river he was talking about. He was talking about this tremendous election fraud before the election. So it wasn't that much of a surprise when it's a close election. He was ahead in some states at the beginning of the night because they were counting and the in-person voting went to him first. And then as the votes came in from the mail-in voting, you had this, what they call a blue shift, where it moved over to Biden. And this is where we are now. So I think Biden needs to win one more state now in order to be crowned King of America, or whatever they call themselves these days, which is fantastic news. And I hope that's what happens. But you never know. You never know with Trump. You never know with this situation. But what Trump did this morning when he made that statement, when he said in the White House, he said that this is a fraudulent election. So have a think about that for a minute. If he wins, he's won a fraudulent election. He did this with the last election as well. He said, "Oh, it's fraudulent. There's all fraud going on," and yet he won it. And you're like, "Well, if it was fraudulent and you won it, should we won the election then?" Oh, no. And we saw the same with Brexit in the UK. There were people saying, "Oh, it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair." The government did this thing where they sent out a leaflet telling everyone how shit it was going to be if we left the EU, which was true. And they said, "Oh, it's not fair." But as soon as they won, they were like, "Oh, okay, well, that's fine then. It's all fine. Everything's fine," even though we know now that Vote Leave broke the law, Leave.eu broke the law. What were they called? Believe, the youth group, broke the law. And no one's bothered investigating whether Russia had anything to do with the damn referendum. But yeah, what Trump has done from the White House is fundamentally undermined the democratic processes of the United States of America. It's something that you'd expect to hear from Fidel Castro in the 1960s, or Stalin, or even Adolf Hitler, I guess, in the 1930s, who didn't have a big problem with America until they joined the war. But you see him saying, "Oh, it's a flawed democracy. It's not real. Nothing you see is real. Nothing you can touch is real. The only thing that's real is what I tell you is real," which is, I think that's the last line of 1984, something like that. It's like he loved Big Brother, but getting to the point where the fundamental rule of the party is don't believe the evidence of your eyes and your ears, which is unfortunately for us what Trump does. David Murphy saying Trump is pretty much finished now. The margin in Nevada will only grow. It's only 8,000 votes though. It's a bit too small for my liking. If it was 80,000 like it is in Michigan, I'd be a lot more laid back. But it does look like it's going to be close. But it's enough to take Biden to 270 votes in the Electoral College, which means that he will win by 2 Electoral College votes, which I think is wonderful, because it's just going to really, really piss Trump off. I mean, if it was a landslide for Biden, maybe that would have upset him more, but I like the idea that he'll always be niggled by the fact that he was so close. But let's not count our chickens before they've actually hatched. There's a court order on Tuesday that Mike's talking about here. The Postal Service said hundreds of thousands of ballots were delayed, and a judge ordered them to count them, but the order was ignored. And who runs the US Postal Service? One of Trump's cronies. Not someone who's worked in the Postal Service for decades, not Agent K from Man in Black 2. No, seriously, this is all you're getting. This is a guy who is a mate of the guy in charge, which is just so typical of our age of cronyism, of our age of Trumocracy, and nepotism. It's all a bit too much. Ascended has said Nevada and Arizona will put Biden on 270. Yep, that's right. ETIAS already exists for non-Schengen visitors to the Schengen area. Yeah, Sean, I know. And this is one of the things that worries me, because if I want to go to America now, if I even to change flights going somewhere else, I need to get a visa. And a visa costs £150. And I've got to go down to London from Durham here, which is another £140 on the train return from here. I might walk, it'll be cheaper. And then I've got to have a meeting. And they always seem to have these meetings at like 7 o'clock in the morning or something. So you've got to get over to the American embassy for that time, which means that you're traveling at rush hour and it's really expensive to use the tube at rush hour. I've got to have an interview to make sure that I'm not a ne'er-do-well. So I can't be asked doing that. So I've just avoided America for the last 4 years, which I just find a bit sad, because I'm quite into with travel. There's a lot of places I'd like to go in America and promote the hell out of the place, but they don't want me. I'm persona non grata, which is fair enough. I got John O'Sullivan from Tipperary. Hello. And we've also got Patrick here. Trump has reinvented and reinvigorated lying in politics. Our own politicians are completely shameless. If a lie is questioned, you just throw another one in the mix. It's very true. It's called a Gish Gallop, I think, which is when you just trot out lie after lie after lie after lie. You make 6 lies in one sentence. And then whoever you're debating against or in the studio with finds it very difficult to go through each of those points that you just made in the time that they are allocated to respond to you. And it makes it sound like you've got some validity to the lies which you are spreading. And it's a pain because we feel like a lot of these lies are very self-evident. I mean, of course, the sun isn't blue, but they go, no, it's blue. It's blue. Look, it's blue. It reminds me of that episode of Star Trek where Jean-Luc Picard had to look up at the lights, and he had to say how many lights there were, and they were trying to get him to say that it was a different number of lights. And he said by the end he'd been tortured so much he did see that number of lights, but he said the real one because he didn't want to be seen to have broken. Anyway, so on to David Murphy. The plan with the fraud might be to contest elections and then send electors and have the VP strike them both. Then Congress votes where he has the numbers. Yeah, and that's something that's come up to last night as well. People were saying that the Democrats look set to take the Senate, and that doesn't look like it's going to be the case anymore. It looks like it's still going to be 51-49 for the Republicans, unfortunately, which means that a lot of the plans that the Democrats had to change the system in some way, they won't be able to go through with it. The one thing they need to do, though, is get rid of that filibuster rule. And there is some partisan support for that, bipartisan, sorry. There is some bipartisan support for that idea of getting rid of that rule. And like I said yesterday, they already got rid of it in the House of Representatives decades ago, I think it was about 100 years ago, because it was such a nightmare and it was so undemocratic. But they still got it in the Senate. David Murphy saying, did you see the tweet from Barnier today? It's going badly. Yeah, I was going to come on to this in a bit of this Hughes at 10. The EU negotiations are going badly. I'm not freaking out. I don't think we're going to end up with no deal. I think we'll just end up with a terrible deal that Johnson, the used carpet salesman, will try and spin in his inimitable way to pretend that he's got this great deal for Britain when actually it's just a bit of a continuation deal, and there's going to be a couple of years sort of where we're in the EU but we're not in the EU, and then he wants divergence after that, and it's all a bit, yeah, whatever, mate. But the thing is with Brexit, the fundamental damage it's going to do to the UK economy and the UK in general, as we've already seen, is it's going to be catastrophic. It's also going to be pretty bad for our neighbours as well. And this is why Brexit is the most, not just the most stupid thing that Britain's ever done, but it's one of the most selfish things that Britain has ever done. And there's a really good book by James Felton called 21 Times Britain Was a Bell End. It's really good. I recommend it. I've got it on the bookshelf upstairs. And it just lists all the time that Britain did really, really stupid, horrible things to people. I'll give you one example. When I was in Panama, I was really interested in finding out about the lost Scottish colony of Caledonia. And what it was that it must have been the late 1600s, the Scots were looking at the success of the Dutch in what's now Indonesia, and the British, English, possessions around the world. And they thought, we'll have a bit of this colonialism action. So they picked a part of Panama called the Dagging Gap. Now, there's a thing called the Panamanian Highway, and it's not all marked as one highway, but essentially it's a road that runs from Alaska all the way through Canada, through America, down through Mexico, through Central America, all the way down through South America to the Tierra del Fuego, right in the bottom tip of Chile. And there's a gap in that highway called the Dagging Gap. And the reason being is it's about 30 miles of jungle that's just absolutely impenetrable. And it always has been, and it probably always will be. And unfortunately, this is where the Scots decided to set up their town of New Caledonia. And they sent over a ship, ships, more than one, full of settlers to go and settle this new place. And they spent loads and loads of money. It was something ridiculous, like 75% of Scotland's entire budget the treasury went on this expedition. They sent a second ship about a year later, and when they arrived, they found that like everyone who had been on the first expedition was dead or had run away. And they were like, shit, what do we do? So they turned to the English, sorry, stop saying British, brain, the English possessions in the West Indies for help. And the people who ran the governors of these outposts of England were told to not give the Scottish men, women, or children any succor, anything whatsoever, not even a barrel of water. So they refused, the English refused Scottish children who had been at sea for months and didn't have any fresh water. They denied them water and let them die. And as a result of Scotland being in so much shit, because economically, that's one of the reasons that they went for the Acts of Union in 1707, a few years later, because they were broke, and England said, well, we'll pay off your debts, but we've already merged the crown. James I of England was James VI of Scotland. But we've already done that, so let's merge our parliaments and just have one shitty parliament in Westminster. And that's one of the huge reasons why I feel like Scotland should just be independent. I'm sorry, when the referendum comes back around, the Indy 2 referendum, I'm not going to move to Scotland just yet, but I'm going to travel up to Scotland. It's only an hour on the train, and I'm going to campaign for leaving England, because I don't believe that England deserve Scotland, to be honest with you. All that lovely haggis and whiskey. And Amy Pond, sorry, Karen Gillan, the best Karen of the lot. Anyway, moving swiftly on. We've got David Murphy. Wonder if the UK is stalling till the US election result. Yes, I think that is certainly the case. But either way, whoever wins the American election presents problems for the British government, I should say, in terms of a trade deal. If they get Trump, then he wants the NHS. We know this. They're going to be privatising more and more parts of the NHS, so it becomes this discombobulated, dismembered corpse of the NHS we used to know and love, barely recognisable from what it used to be. Jobs for the boys, get some more money for Serco. And if Biden wins, as is looking very likely at the moment, if Biden wins, then he strongly identifies as Irish, an Irish American, and he's not going to be very happy about essentially setting up borders on the island of Ireland, the violation of the Good Friday Agreement, this bill that's gone through Parliament, which basically breaks the withdrawal agreement. And he's going to be like, well, sort Ireland out, make sure Ireland's okay, and then we can talk about a trade deal. You know what? Even if Biden and Trump got together and said, let's be presidents together and let's put our differences aside and let's go to Britain and give them the best trade deal ever in all of the goddamn world, still our trade with the US will be about 1% of our GDP, because it's far away. Like Dougal looks out the window and he's a bit confused with things that are small and far away. That's your average Brexiteer. There's a thing called economic gravity, which means that you trade with the people closest to you. It's not like you drive halfway across the country to go to a Sainsbury's when there's one around the corner. It seems quite self-evident. So I've got loads of messages to go through here. I'm going to try and do this quickly because I only want to make this a half-hour podcast. Can't wait for Boris Pissil and his government to get their ears handed to them in the European Court of Justice. Seems like they expected the EU's attitude to the rule of law to be the same as theirs. Yeah. I don't know what the ECJ, I think they're going to the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, actually. I don't really know what they're going to do. I mean, they impose sanctions on Britain. We're already putting sanctions on ourselves through Brexit. So just more punishments for no reason, for posturing. T says it will likely be a goods continuation deal without services or cooperation agreements like international criminal databases. Yeah, T, I'm on the money. Give the money to T. Give him the money right now. There's no money. Sorry, T. David Murphy saying they were thinking of building a bridge, but it never happened. and saying, yeah, bankrupt to Scotland. Yeah, but the English had a hand in it. They had a hand in messing things up for the Scots because they didn't want them to be successful. And I reckon that no one in their right mind would go to that part of Panama and go, let's build a colony here. No, they just wouldn't. They just so I'm guessing that they were given some duff information, and the English were all over the Caribbean at that time. So who gave them that duff information? Next up, we've got Leo. Hi, cuz. With so many different vote recount rules in places across different states, and Trump, an individual who wants to take advantage of each of them, will we be in for a drawn-out affair? Well, not really, because the way it works is we've got a month until over a month actually, until the electors are sent to Washington to say who they're voting for based on the popular vote of their state. So we've got a month to do recounts and things like that. But whenever there's been a recount in the past, apart from the one in Florida where it got stopped famously, the Gore versus Bush Jr. Recounts, other recounts for the Senate and things like that, they've come within 300 of the original tally. And so it would take a monumental error for Trump to suddenly get another 7,000 votes to overtake Biden, or for Biden's votes to actually be for Trump, and then you'd only need 3,500. In the example of Nevada, in which Biden is only 7,000 ahead at the moment, which isn't very much. Chubai says, I met someone in Colombia who had to come through the gap. Did have a bit of trouble. Yeah, the gap's kind of like overrun by gangsters and stuff. Well, not gangsters. It's not a safe way to do it. You're best getting a boat from Colon in Panama over to the San Blas Islands, which is beautiful islands, kind of halfway between Colon and Cartagena in Colombia. Funnily enough, Colombia and Panama used to be one country, and that's why the time changes when you go across the border to Costa Rica. You have to add an hour on to your watch because Panama uses the same time zone as Colombia. Because it all used to be one country until about 120 years ago, when America wanted to build a canal, and the French had tried, and 27,000 people had died, so they weren't too keen on the idea. The Colombian government at the time, and the Americans then said, okay, that's really interesting. Went to Panama City and said, hey guys, have you heard of independence? Isn't independence great? I think you should definitely go for independence. And the Dagging Gap, very conveniently, gave them an excuse to say, well, actually, we should be two separate countries anyway, because there's a gap between us. The Dagging Gap. Yeah. So, yeah, and then that happened. Panama got independence, and a few years later, they got a canal, which the Americans ran for the best part of the 20th century. Made loads of money out of. Right, anyway, moving on. Oh, wow, I've got loads of messages here. I don't know if I'm going to get through all this. I was going to lift my laptop up so you weren't seeing me head so much when I'm looking down, but I forgot to do that. I'll do that tomorrow. You don't need a tactical master. People just blindly accept your lies. That's very true. If you lie enough, people just believe you. People just go, oh, well, you know, I like that he lies. People say. Ian Ford says, I don't know what Ian Ford says because it's just scrolled up. If Biden wins, then Bozo will have to go to the EU with a begging bowl for a free trade deal, securing the Good Friday Agreement. Yeah, you're right. David Murphy saying bipartisan support in Congress for the Good Friday Agreement. Only one thing they agree on. Yep, that's very true. And the Americans had a big hand in the drafting of the Good Friday Agreement as well. The Good Friday Agreement is based on the notion that the EU exists. It's referred to in the Good Friday Agreement, and it was always supposed that Britain and Ireland would be EU nations, so there would never be a problem with borders and having different weights and measures and standards and ways of telling the time and border posts and all that kind of nonsense, visas. But still, Ireland is within the common travel area of the UK and has been since Irish independence. And yeah, the Irish are the only people in Britain who are not legally seen as aliens who weren't born in Britain. Well, actually, Boris Johnson wasn't born in Britain. New Yorker, wasn't he? Okay, so Patrick Baker says, I'm going to revisit the film Passport to Pimlico and maybe declare itself independent and sovereign. Passport to Pimlico, Ealing comedy, fantastic movie, one of my favourites, with counterparts and coronets, which is absolutely brilliant. I don't want to spoil it for you, but basically, there's a guy, he's 13th in line for a fortune, and he basically kills all the 12 people who are before him in the line for that fortune. And all 12 people, young and old, male and female, are all played by Alec Guinness. Genius. Anyway, so moving on. Brexit is going to crucify the Republic of Ireland farming industry, no matter what happens at this stage. My uncle's cattle farm in Donegal, which has been in the family for generations, will fold under any kind of deal. Andy McAvoy, yeah, I am so sorry. This is one of the most disgusting things that the British have done, because it's not just about them. They want to shoot themselves in the dick. Great, you know, be my guest, but they're not. They're driving off a cliff, and they're grabbing as many people around us and companies and countries to try and pull them over the cliff as well. And there's that Machiavellian streak in a lot of Brexiteers where they go, oh yeah, but it's going to hurt the EU as well. Like the EU are our enemy. And then you go, but 21 of the NATO members are also members of the EU. So is NATO our enemy? No, NATO's great. We love NATO. Ooh, the army, poppies, poppies, poppies. And you're like, well, you like NATO, which is majority formed of EU countries. There's only 29 countries in NATO, and nearly all of them are in the EU. But they're our enemies, and Vladimir Putin's got our best interests at heart. Right, moving swiftly on, because I've only got a couple more minutes. Got Mike saying at this point, even if they did that, there's no way that 27 national parliaments will secure the deal in time. Yeah, I think they're going to kick the can down the road, probably. Simon says, damn, didn't realise you were live. We could have chatted about ginger in Uganda just because. So the name of my island is Ginger Island, spelled Jinja, and I got that from the city of Ginger in Uganda, which I went through in the Odyssey. It's actually it's the source of the Nile that joins up with the other Nile, forms the Nile. It's on Lake Victoria, and there is an island off the coast, which would be probably a better place to call Ginger Island. But I always like the spelling of it. There was an old map that I saw once, which was presented to Isaac Newton, so it would have been 1770, something like that. And it was of Africa, and it had all the different tribes marked on it. And where present-day Uganda is, down that area, it was called the Kingdom of Ginjiro, and it was run by the bomber. Was it the Grand Bomber, something like that, of Ginjiro, who ran the place. And there was a nearby tribe where they were saying that the king was. They decided who was going to be king when the old king died, by having a running race, which I really loved. It's quite Black Panther. But could you imagine Boris Johnson having a running race against Keir Starmer to see who's going to be the next Prime Minister? I'll pay to watch that. No, actually, I wouldn't pay to watch Boris Johnson ever. Okay, so we've got... Oh, wow, there's so many people. I was going to knock off at 5:30, but I'm just going to go through your messages first before I go. Because I haven't even touched on what happened in Parliament today with the lockdown measures, which kicks in 2.5 hours. Just the time just goes. It just goes. Right. So Michael said, "Damn, didn't realise you had." Yeah, okay. Alex Morrison, are you going to help the Welsh win their independence referendum as well? Alex, yes. I was my sister married a Welshman, silly girl. And she's got 4 boys, the eldest of which is only a few years younger than me, my nephew. And we're good mates, and we go out drinking a lot. He lives over near Wrexham, Mould, Corwen Way, and he speaks fluent Welsh. And I always said, well, you know, whenever they had a poll, there was only over 25% that wanted to leave the UK, because on the face of it, it would be kind of crazy to leave the UK if you're Wales. But considering Brexit, and considering that Scotland's going to go and the island's going to be reunified, being lumbered with England for the next 100 years just seems a bit daft to me. And I think you can make a very strong argument to say, if you want to sell your Airbuses, or you want Airbus wings, or you want to sell your sheep, your lamb, sorry, rejoin the EU. What's going to be easier for Wales, for this small cluster of constituencies, some which are Tory, to convince Westminster to rejoin the EU, or for them to declare independence and just rejoin the EU? I think the latter is going to be easier. So yes, I will help with that. I hope I don't need a visa. Wayne says, hello, mate. Hello. Ascended said, got to watch for faithless electors now. Well, yeah, that's a point. That's a really good point, that is, isn't it? Because if someone says they're not going to vote for Biden and he's on 270, didn't think of that. Shit. It's just like a Russian doll of shit. Every time you take off a layer, there's another layer inside made of shit. Just waiting for the inevitable mass shooting after the result comes in. I will could be there, but I just have to watch. Yeah, I don't know. It was quite calm last night. There was no riots or anything. I think people are just exhausted, to be honest with you. But who knows? US guy here. I just find it weird that any Britain thinks that the US will give Britain any sort of deal that won't be in the US best interest, especially if Trump is in charge. Well, if anyone's in charge, people don't do trade deals because they want to buy things off you. They do trade deals because they want to sell you stuff. So yeah, of course it's going to be in their interest. And when you've got an economy like America's, which is nearly $20 trillion of GDP a year, 20 trillion, and the UK is 2.7 trillion. So they're like, they're a good. Trying to do some maths in my head here. 7 times bigger than the UK in terms of the economy. In terms of population, we're 66 million. They're 330 million. They're 5 times bigger than us. They're not going to give us a fair deal. Why would they? They just say, here's the deal. Take it or leave it, and we'll have to take it. That's why Brexit is the biggest surrender of sovereignty that's ever happened in the history of any advanced nation in history that hasn't lost a war voluntarily. Next one is from Dagging saying UK. That's okay. And then we have T saying we find it weird too. Yeah, right. Both Jacob saying Trump does state America first, but not sure he also does not like the EU. Very true. Because Putin doesn't like the EU, and Trump does what Putin tells him. It's really rubbish having COVID. I had COVID at the beginning of last month, and I can't taste this tea at all. It's rubbish. I should probably get a beer, because at least I couldn't taste it, but at least get me drink. Graham, would you be a guest star on our show tomorrow? We go live at 8 p.m. Yeah, Wayne, if you're watching this, let's do that. 8 p.m. tomorrow. Yeah, I'm up for that. Can you get in touch with me? Call me. We're on Twitter. I think we follow each other. Can you just send me a message? Luke is saying, with the postal voting, a number of states may well flip. Yeah, but which way? With Trump probably gone, Boris is going to be Putin's poodle on his own now. Well, I don't think that Boris Johnson is Boris's poodle. I think he's Alexander, the guy who just made the guy in the House of Lords. I think he's his poodle. I think Cummings is Putin's poodle. As you see with the fact that Cummings lived for 3 years in Russia in the 1990s. Do you know who else did that? Have you ever seen the movie Lord of War with Nicolas Cage? Anyway, moving swiftly on. US trade deal. Welcome to our randomly pesticide. Welcome to our randomly pesticide crops, or drugged up cattle and chicken, and all mystery chemical induced products. Meat bird in a can. Can't wait. We've got Brian Smith saying, as a view from the US, the hatred has always been that has become more socially acceptable to express. It's a political fight over national identity rather than policies. It's very true. But Trump has no policies. It's not the best question to ask him. What's your policies for your next term in office, mate? And he goes, everyone hates me. And, I just don't like it is, don't I? even though he lies all the time. Bizarre. Okay, so Luke Conley, faithful selectors is a serious concern. Simon Winden saying, did I hear on another feed that some chumps, it's hard to say, had in fact tried to storm one of the courts? Probably. If I go shopping tomorrow, this is Patrick, can I buy food but not non-essentials? I'm already in the shop. But what difference did someone take a buy from Amazon? Patrick, I think you can do whatever you like. And then if you get caught, you say, I was testing my eyesight. And then it's okay. Luke saying, Nigel Farage campaigning for Trump was insane. Well, not for Nigel Farage. He probably made a lot of money out of it. And that's all he cares about. Carsten Schumann says, do you think it will be a no-deal Brexit? Finally shut up the Brexiteers? No, I don't think it'll be a no-deal Brexit. Someone mentioned what it will be further up in the comments there if you read back, but it will be a kind of continuation deal for goods but not services, because we're 80% of our GDP is services, so they're going to protect the service industry, kind of, but allow the goods question is the big problem, because that's going to be a physical thing that people will actually see from day to day. But it's really interesting this overlap between people who don't want Brexit to happen, who do want Brexit to happen, and they don't care about the economic consequences, because sovereignty is worth more than money and wealth and influence, power, reputation, and trust. Everything we had that was thrown away. But they are really angry about the lockdown causing a lot of financial, economic uncertainty and this economic downturn that we've seen, because people aren't going out and spending money. Well, they are spending it all on Amazon. Mr. Bezos becomes richer and richer. But the other thing that I want to talk about in the half hour, in this very long half hour podcast, is about the vote today to bring in lockdown 6 weeks too late. And that's what it should have been called. That's what the bill should have been called. It should be, we're going to lock down England, brackets, 6 weeks too late, comma, once a few thousand people have died unnecessarily. Because that's what they've done. They were told at the end of September that it was time to lock down. Keir Starmer said at the beginning of October they should lock down, and they chastised him for trying to win political points. And and then they decided to have a lockdown. And there was a document, I don't know if anyone saw this, but there was a document that went around the Tories saying, don't use the word lockdown, call it something else. Call it a circuit breaker, call it this or that. Don't call it a lockdown, because people will not like that. But the one question that they could have asked Boris, who was 3 hours late for his own press conference when the whole nation was waiting to find out what would fucking happen with their jobs and their businesses and being able to see their parents and whether they were going to be able to bury their relatives or get married or whatever. He kept the nation waiting for 3 fucking hours. Do you know why? Boris Johnson is the world's biggest cunt. You thought it was Trump, didn't you? You thought it was Trump, but actually Boris Johnson's somehow even worse. And someone said that he sounds like the bastard love child of Billy Bunter and a Dalek. And now whenever I hear him, I can't get that image out of my head. It's Billy Bunter or a Dalek. But I just hate him. I absolutely despise the man. So this vote went ahead, and there were some Tory rebels. I think Theresa May was one of them, but not enough to nobble the bill because Labour were on board with it. We needed a lockdown, but we needed it 6 weeks ago, and time machines don't exist. And now all these people are dead. And if you watched Prime Minister's Question Time today, Keir Starmer stood up and said, we should have done this 6 weeks ago. What about those people who are dead? And Boris Johnson didn't answer the question. And they said, well, we should have done this 6 weeks ago. Look at all the look at all the damage it's going to do to the economy. And Boris Johnson didn't answer the question. He just blustered and couldn't. He said he made the right decision at the time. The right decision to kill thousands of British people. Now, one of the interesting things that started this week, the Good Law Project of Joy Leon Moore. No, that's not his name, is it? Not more. He has set up a thing to prosecute the Tories, or investigate them for giving their mates all this money for PPE and for the test and trace nonsense that doesn't actually do anything. If that goes through the courts, that could get very interesting very fast. I'm going to have to wrap this up soon, but I've got a load more messages. Early Mail votes 78% Biden. Trump told his supporters to okay, but Luke's talking about Luke's saying Colton the bravest man he ever met. Still about Farage talking about Trump. Yeah, I hate Farage. And every time a celebrity dies these days, there's someone that I like, there's someone that I respected. I can't help but feel like, why can't someone I absolutely hate die? Why can't just one of those gang of bastards? I can make like a huge death list and hang it on the door of all the people who's, I don't wish death on them, but I very much look forward to the day that I can dance upon their graves. And yeah, this thing, I'd love to have these people and just one of them just to snuff it randomly. Hopefully, it doesn't have to be in a ridiculous way, but just one less thing, one less dickhead to worry about in the public eye. That would do me nicely. Sorry, God, going to hell for that. Early voters are going Trump's way, just based on my early observation of early voters. Biden's way. Okay, he's corrected himself. I was like, what? In Pennsylvania, the proportion of Biden early voters compared to Trump is reported to be around 3.1 in Biden's favor. Mathematically, that would be a dead heat. Yeah, I've written off Pennsylvania. I mean, he doesn't need to win it to win it. I mean, we've got to keep looking at Nevada, because Nevada is the closest at the moment for him winning, and it will get him over the line. That's all I care about at the moment. Okay, breaking. Large animated crush of Stop the Count protesters trying to push their way into Detroit, where ballots are being counted in the TCF hall. Oh my God. They're being blocked by guards at the door. Jesus Christ. Fucking brown shirts. Mike, in other words, fascist attempts to block the democratic process. Yes, Mike. Rolf Jacobs is saying, I think certain social problems can best solved when the left and right work together. Yes, I agree. That's what we need to do, but we're just tearing chunks out of each other. But that's the thing. I mean, you've got people on the right who want to destroy the rule of law, and there's no common ground there. You can't go, well, we could just destroy a bit of it. And then people on the right here in the UK who want to leave the EU, and you either leave or you don't leave. And it's kind of like, there is no common ground. But then there could be. We could go for a Norway deal. We could join the European Economic Area. But, we don't have the will or the political capital to pursue that. And so we're pursuing the most costly, devastating, ridiculous Brexit that we could possibly put our hands upon. Luke's saying, Graham Hughes, are you going to do not going to the podcast around Corbyn getting booted from the party? Well, I did a podcast a while ago with Phil in Gibraltar, at Phil in Gibraltar. He's quite a Corbynista, and I laid down all the things about Corbyn. But one thing I'm going to do is, throughout lockdown, I think I'm just going to do more of these from 10 o'clock each night. I'm going to try and be on time, and just for half an hour or maybe 45 minutes. Then there's a special bonus edition. It's 45 minutes long. You'll be able to chat about stuff. You can send me your messages, and I'll wax lyrical about the news stories of the day, because I'm locked down and I've got nothing better to do. I have actually, but I love you guys. Anyway, listen, it's a 11:15, so I'm going to hit the sack. Well, I'm not actually. I'm going to go and watch TV. But thank you for joining me in my very first Hughes at 10. And I'm going to try and do this again tomorrow and see how it goes. I'll get to the messages that you've left at the bottom of the screen that I haven't got to yet. But hopefully tomorrow we will have the votes in from Nevada. And if we do, that means that we will be able to say with a good amount of certainty that Biden has won this. Pennsylvania will be the icing on the cake. I hope he wins. I hope Biden wins Pennsylvania by 2 votes. That would be fantastic. And then they have a big recount, and then he wins by 3 votes. That'd be even better. And that gives him a bit of a buffer zone in case we have any faithless electors. I don't think we will, because I think people will see it as illegitimate that they didn't, go for the person who actually won fair and square in that particular state. So, but let's see. Okay, so till tomorrow at 10 o'clock, I'll say sayonara and take it easy. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye. Oh, hang on. You press end and it says, do you want to end? Bye.